Happy New Year. Today, this is the January 5th, 2022 Land Use Commission meeting, which is being held using interactive conference technology, linking video conference participants and members of the public who are interested via the Zoom internet conferencing program. We're doing this, of course, to comply with ongoing state and county official operational directives during the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. For all meeting participants, I'd just like to urge you to speak slowly, clearly, and identify yourself prior to speaking for the record. Please be aware that this Zoom meeting is being recorded and your continued participation is your implied consent to be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you should exit the meeting now. This Zoom technology allows the parties and each participating commissioner individual remote access to the meeting via our own personal digital devices. Because of that, and often due to matters entirely outside of our control, occasional disruptions to connectivity may occur for one or more participants of the meeting at any given time. If this happens, please let us know. And please be patient with us as we try to restore audiovisual signals so that we can continue to conduct our work during the pandemic. For members of the public who wish to testify during the public witness portion of any of the agenda items on today's agenda, and if you are accessing this meeting by phone, you can use the key sequence *9 to virtually raise your hand and *6 to request to be unmuted. If you are accessing this meeting, however, via Zoom software, you just use the raise your hand function. We will take breaks from time to time, approximately 10 minutes every hour. My name is Jonathan Lekeke Scheuer, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the LUC chair. We currently have 8 seated commissioners of a possible 9. Along with me, Commissioner Don Chang, Commissioner Gary Okuda, Commissioner Edmund Axon, we wouldn't do that to him, our Executive Officer, Daniel Aradenker, our Chief Planner, Scott Derrickson, our Staff Planner, Riley Hakoda, our Chief Clerk, Natasha Quinones, our Deputy Attorney General, Dan Morris, are all on the island of Oahu. Commissioner Nancy Cabral is holding it up on Hawaii Island in Hilo. Is there even sun in Hilo today, Nancy? Yay. Commissioner Lee Ohigashi is on the island of Maui, and Commissioner Daniel Giovanni is on the island of Kauai. Commissioner Wong of Oahu is excused for today's meeting. Court transcriptions are being done from the Zoom recording. Our first order of business is to adopt the December 22nd and 23rd, 2021 minutes. Ms. Quinones, has there been any written testimony submitted on adoption of the minutes?
Hello, Chair. Good morning. This is Natasha. No testimony has been received on the minutes.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to testify? And this is exclusively limited to adoption of the minutes. I'm going to note for any members of the public who are particularly interested in the important agricultural lands agenda item that is on this agenda, but on tomorrow's agenda. We will not be talking about IAL today. We will be talking about the Oahu IAL issue tomorrow. Right now, we're just talking about adoption of the minutes. Is there anybody who's in the audience who wishes to testify on adoption of the minutes? If so, either press *9 if you're dialing in or use the raise your hand function. Seeing none, members, any comments or corrections? Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When a vote is taken, may it be recorded that I abstained from December 22 because I was not present, but I will be voting in favor on December 23. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cabral.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made for adoption by Commissioner Cabral and seconded by Commissioner Ohigashi. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Ardenker, would you please poll the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is to adopt the minutes. Commissioner Wong is excused. Commissioner Okuda,
Abstain on December 22nd. Aye in favor of December 23rd.
so noted. Commissioner Axon,
Abstain.
Commissioner Cabral,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovanni,
Aye.
Commissioner Ohigashi,
Aye.
Chair Schreier.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. The motion passes with 6 affirmative votes.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you would continue, our next agenda item is the tentative meeting schedule. Mr. Ordinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted by the chair, tomorrow we will be meeting once again by Zoom on the Oahu IAL matter. On January 19th, we will be taking up, excuse me, Mr. Chair, SP 21-4413, which is the New Century Public Charter School special permit request. That meeting hearing is also scheduled for January 20th. On February 2nd, we will be taking up the adoption of order in the New Century Public Charter School matter. And if needed, we will also be taking up the Oahu IAL matter. On February 3rd, we will be taking up, which is also going to be by Zoom. February meetings will be by Zoom as well. On February 3rd, we will be taking up the Oahu IAL matter if necessary, and DR 21-71 Kaukonahua Ranch if necessary, and DR 21-72, which is a motion for reconsideration in the church matter. On February 16th, we will be doing the FDA acceptance for A19-809, which is Puamalanai Miki Basin. That matter is also scheduled for February 17th. On March 9th, we will be taking up Big Island matter of DR 21-72. Thursday, March 10th is tentatively scheduled for either the Oahu IAL matter or DR 21-75, which is the Kaukonahua Ranch matter. And I should note for the commissioners that coming March, our meetings may be in a hybrid format where we have a location for the public and any commissioners who would like to attend as well as by Zoom. March 23rd, we will be taking up A87-610, which is the KSY solar farm matter. And on March 24th, we will be taking up the Kanaha Hotel FEIS acceptance. On April 30th, we also have scheduled, April 13th, I'm sorry, we also have scheduled the Waiawa solar farm matter, as well as April 14th. April 27th, we have the KAA IAL matter tentatively scheduled, and the 28th is currently open. And that takes us through April, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Dan. Commissioners, are there any questions? No? Mr. Ardenker?
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to make an announcement. We're very excited to announce that Martina Segura has joined LUC staff. Currently, she's an 89-day hire. We hope to make her permanent. Martina will be assisting the planners and our drafting tech with all sorts of different duties. She is graduated from Chaminade with a double major in environmental science and environmental studies, and we are thrilled to have her on board.
Excellent, welcome. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Ordenker about our tentative meeting schedule? Okay, seeing none. Our next agenda item is a presentation from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development on the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. Our Land Use Commission staff has informed me that no public testimony has been received, written public testimony regarding this presentation from OPSD. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this matter, which is a briefing? If so, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function. Seeing none, we're going to recognize Mary Alice Evans, the director of OPSD, and Danielle Bass, the state's sustainability coordinator. Who's going to go first? Mary Alice?
I'm going to introduce Danielle, who probably needs no introduction to you. She's our state sustainability coordinator, and she will be making a presentation to you on a matter that I think is very dear to your hearts as well, and that is the sustainability of our state. So go ahead, Danielle.
Good morning. A happy New Year to everyone and the participants here. Thank you for offering me this opportunity to present the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. My name is Danielle Malieke Kai Bass, and I hail from the Ahupua'as of Waipio and Waiava, Oahu, in the community of Mililani. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my presentation?
Right now, we're seeing the presenter's view.
Oh, okay. Thank
So you have to flip screens.
How do I, sorry about that. Presenter view? Is that
There
it?
we go. Now we got it.
Okay. Thank you so much. So just wanted to let the commissioners know that after some consultation with the director, and out of tremendous respect to the charge and mission of the Land Use Commission, we decided to provide a very in-depth, comprehensive presentation of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, far more extensive than previous presentations in other venues. So we hope that this will provide much information to you all. And I will go ahead. So again, my name is Danielle Bass, the State Sustainability Coordinator of the Statewide Sustainability Branch in the State of Hawaii's Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. This is a relatively new position. I've served in this position since 2017 and during its creation. And we're going to go in and provide a bit of the the adjustments and new roles and responsibilities of the State of Hawaii's Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, the establishment of the statewide sustainability branch, and then go in for a deep dive of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, its recommendations, as well as specific land use recommendations for the benefit of you all, and end with our call to action. So just a
sorry, and call my Danielle, just so I can manage the meeting, about how long do you think you have for your presentation?
It's 30 slides, Chair.
Okay, that's great. So that should give us a good time, and then maybe we take a break and do Q&A after. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So just to provide a very quick overview of the very recent changes of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, to begin with our new logo and our name change, as you can see here. Over the last 2 years now, the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has expanded in its roles and responsibilities thanks to the support of the Hawaii State Legislature and the Governor of the state of Hawaii. Not only was our office renamed as the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, but we also are charged to provide information to not only the Governor, but the Legislature and the state and county agencies. Specifically, our roles and responsibilities were expanded to provide sea level rise adaptation coordination, climate adaptation and sustainability planning and coordination, as well as environmental review. You will see that predominantly our state coastal zone management program will be the lead entity for sea level rise adaptation coordination, and the development of the statewide sustainability branch will work on other climate adaptive matters as well as sustainability matters for the state. The environmental review will remain with the former OEQC staff, now renamed as the Environmental Review Program within the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. So to provide a quick overview of the newly established statewide sustainability branch, again, this was established just 2 years ago and we've been hitting the ground running. This branch is currently staffed by myself. However, the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development will be going in this legislative session with a budget request to requesting for a sustainability land use planner, as well as various sustainability and climate adaptation specialists to help support this branch, in addition to a greenhouse gas sequestration specialist to also provide support to our state greenhouse gas sequestration task force, which is attached to our office and staffed by the statewide sustainability branch. So to provide a quick overview, this branch is tasked to develop, organize, promote policies and programs to assist the meeting of Hawaii's numerous sustainability and climate policies and goals. We'll be explaining that a little bit later in the presentation, as well as identify, evaluate, and make recommendations regarding proposed legislation, regulatory changes, and policy modifications of the state of Hawaii and other bodies for the purpose of encouraging activities that best sustain, protect, and enhance the quality of the environment, our economy, and the community for the present and future benefit of the people of Hawaii. So going into the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, I'm going to explain to you the update process that we conducted at the statewide sustainability branch, as well as the public outreach. So first and foremost, why did we update the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan? There is a legal mandate pursuant to Act 146 of 2019, which is now codified as Part 2 in the implementation part of the Hawaii State Planning Act as Hawaii Revised Statute Section 22665. The Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan is now codified to serve as the state's climate and sustainability strategic action plan to determine future actions and guiding the coordination and implementation of Hawaii's sustainability and climate adaptation goals. This plan will be updated every 10 years. So with respect to this plan we just published in June of 2021, the plan will serve from 2021 to 2030. The statewide sustainability branch fully intends to update said plan pursuant to this law at the end of this decade in preparation for the next decade of 2030 to 2040. Just highlighting some of these charges. Now going into the update process, when we were planning for the 2020-2030 decade of action, we knew at the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development that there were multiple expectations of us in the revision and update of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. First and foremost, we needed to provide an extensive legal review of Hawaii's laws and plans as they relate to sustainability, our various climate mandates, and state agency and county plans statewide. We knew we needed to provide extensive public outreach to try to match the 2008 public outreach of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. And we knew we needed to coordinate extensively with stakeholders to help us determine future actions for the state of Hawaii and identify gaps and recommend future actions to achieve within these next 8 years in this decade by 2030. So I'm proud to report to you that we were able to review over 150 laws, policies, plans, and strategies. We conducted, and by the way, when I mention we, I want to explicitly highlight the tremendous support we had from ICF, a climate planning firm that is nationally recognized and also positioned here in the state of Hawaii. This royal we I talk about, again, the statewide sustainability branch is only staffed by one employee, myself. And so I couldn't have done this without the excellent team at ICF to conduct this extensive community outreach. So we conducted public surveys as well as provided 9 virtual public outreach sessions during the COVID pandemic, which yielded over 800 public participants, including 230 participating organizations and agencies. During the review and coordination with our stakeholders, we distributed 2 drafts and provided 2-week reviews per draft, as well as 5 public presentations in the review of this, which actually yielded over 65 state and county reviewing agencies to provide us with that proper feedback for this comprehensive strategic action plan. All to summarize that we were able to identify 8 focus areas, highlight 17 case studies entitled the Sustaining Hawaii series, which highlights the resilience, sustainability, and economic challenges the state of Hawaii has experienced when we discuss sustainability and climate resilience as a state. We identified 38 strategies to take on during this decade of action by 2030, as well as over 250 recommended action, all in a readable 117 pages. This is available by PDF online at https://hawaii2050.hawaii.gov. We also have an interactive version with the same URL, https://hawaii2050.hawaii.gov/interactive. That's the much more fun looking and interactive version for the public to take a look at. So when we talk about our framework and our product of the Hawaii 2050 plan, we knew that this isn't the state of Hawaii's first crack at sustainability, but more of an opportunity to align multiple efforts. First and foremost, the United Nations has adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals for this decade of action to be achieved by 2030. So we found this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals framework to be a common and wonderful framework for our plan to also align with. After using that 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals framework, we aligned those 150 state laws, state plans, county climate and sustainability plans, the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is our voluntary sustainability initiative as a state, as well as the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative led by Governor Ige, all to provide this result of Hawaii 2050 for this decade. So when I've discussed the extensive stakeholder coordination and collaborative public outreach, I just wanted to mahalo and list all of the entities that helped us in this extensive collaborative public outreach that our branch was able to conduct. Without the mana'o and the ike provided from these organizations, we wouldn't have the robust plan that we have. So I just wanted to provide a quick mahalo to these organizations and state, federal, and county agencies. Also, when I discussed that we had collaborative work with over 65 state and county agencies, again, I want to mahalo all of these agencies throughout the state of Hawaii and throughout all of our counties for also pitching in this kako effort to update the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan for this decade. Since publication on June 2021, the statewide sustainability branch has met extensively with our policymakers, state agencies, county agencies, and has tried to provide as much public outreach as possible, considering the capacity and the staffing of this branch. So we were able to present to multiple entities, organizations, task forces, and commissions, including yours, as well as we were able to work with our many state agencies and county agencies that assisted us. Policymakers have been very interested in the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan, and we've met with them over the interim in 2021 regarding the potential drafting of legislation. So we do know and we are aware that the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan will be cited in the preambles of various bills this coming year. And also, I really want to mahalo our media partners listed here. If it wasn't for them, again, this is a one-man branch. So, it's really that Laulima concept of many hands make light work. So just wanted to thank everyone for to help provide the extensive community public outreach for our branch here. Now, going into the recommendations of the Hawaii 2050 sustainability plan. I wanted to share with you, commissioners, that this is going, the screen you see here is the first publication and consolidation of all of our legal and statutory sustainability and climate targets. You're going to start seeing these statutory targets through codified from our policymakers and partners at the legislature, where we need to achieve a sustainable outcome by a certain year. So what we were able to do through the development of this plan is we were able to actually collect all of this information in an easy 2-page spread that is also available in our interactive website, hawaii2050.hawaii.gov/interactive. So if you want to know what we need to achieve by when, I strongly suggest you take a look at this. These are our guiding legal and statutory sustainability and climate targets that we need to achieve. And there are quite a few that we need to achieve by 2030 in the next 8 years, which include a statewide energy efficiency portfolio standard, doubling food production, our RPS that the public is very much aware of, a clean transportation goal for the state fleet to transition to zero emission vehicles, local farm to school meal goals of 30% by 2030 in all of our schools statewide, as well as statewide departmental procurement benchmarks for state departments to procure locally produced food. So when we looked at these various laws and the initiatives from many of our counterparts and partners across the state, we note, and during this COVID-19 pandemic, we wanted to really highlight and elevate 8 focus areas, simple 8 focus areas recommended for this decade of action. We know with climate change that we have global warming accelerating. We know that we need to become more resilient and adaptive, and we know we need to be a much more sustainable and vibrant economy here in Hawaii. So we wanted to redirect and show these 8 focus areas from the feedback we received from those 850 participants statewide to first and foremost promote a sustainable economic recovery through strategies including supporting local agriculture, green workforce development, and regenerative and sustainable tourism. These are very common areas that we've heard throughout the media, throughout the public, that this is what they want to see. And this is what they very much clearly communicated to our branch in the update of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. Also important, we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Not only do we have state targets and laws to meet those emission reduction standards to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we've also identified other strategies through energy, transportation, and waste sectors to help direct us there. We also know that through the changing climate, we are seeing many changes in Hawaii's climate relating to heat issues and even sea level rise, adaptive measures, wildfires, and drought. So we need to improve our climate resilience for the state of Hawaii by continuing to monitor and adapt to these climate impacts, by taking actions to increase the resilience of the natural and built environments and their occupants. So in this focus area, we've identified multiple strategies to get us there. We also want to help direct the state to advance sustainable communities, to improve land use and access to green space, advance sustainable practices in our schools, and encourage sustainable buildings and infrastructures. And while we're doing this, we need to continue to advance equity to ensure equitable access to our resources and address the affordable housing and homelessness crisis that our state faces. We will not have a sustainable Hawaii if it's not affordable. We will not be a thriving, sustainable state if it is not affordable for our own residents. And we want to also improve gender equity. This is something we heard during the COVID-19 pandemic, where there were many inequities found between the genders, where many women had to not only provide workforce support, but also childcare when their own children were not able to go to their schools. So we really need to continue to accelerate the improvement of our gender equity in the state of Hawaii. I will always be a proponent for institutionalizing sustainability throughout our government as the state sustainability coordinator to increase our government's capacity through institutionalized collaboration to address sustainability and greening our government operations. So we need to walk the walk and as we're talking this talk. And while we're doing that, we need to also preserve this natural environment to include a focus on clean water, marine resources and ecosystems, and our natural resource protection. Hawaii is a very special and unique place. That is why we all live here, and we want to continue to live here and sustain. And by doing so, we can achieve that by preserving our natural environment and ensuring that we have clean water, which is becoming much of an issue right now, as many of you are aware. Finally, we need to perpetuate our traditional ecological knowledge and values throughout the state as we tackle sustainability and climate challenges. This is a CAWCO effort. So now that we've given an overview of these 8 focus areas, let's dive a little deeper into the strategies to achieve these focus areas. So in terms of the focus area to promote a sustainable economic recovery, as I discussed, this does focus a lot on the advancement and development and expansion of our agricultural economy. We want to promote our farmer livelihoods, support local markets and locally grown food, and promote sustainable, resilient farmland practices and infrastructure. Not only do we want to focus on our agricultural economy, but we want to also invest in a green workforce development, beginning with our youth. Now, a green workforce not only pertains to our conservation workforce, but it also expands to energy sectors, jobs like my own and the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, jobs that you're doing, commissioners, and the Land Use Commission staff are doing, jobs that our farmers are doing and the DOA is doing. So we really want to look at this green workforce development really in an expansive opportunity for a way to redesign our operations and redesign our buildings and our infrastructure, transitioning from gray to green infrastructure. We know that we need to foster development and jobs that sustains our families financially, support the diversification of our economy while reducing the environmental footprints of our tourism industry, and support our Native Hawaiian culture and reduce the impact of the tourism industry in our own local communities. We heard a lot about that in 2020 during our community outreach. Other strategies for focus area to reduce our greenhouse gas emission range from measuring and manage and plan for greenhouse gas emission reduction. For instance, the Department of Health Clean Air Branch always provides an annual report to measure our greenhouse gas emission inventory. So we know our emissions in the state of Hawaii, and now it's just a matter of bringing those emissions down. So we can do that by continuing to measure and manage and plan. One recommended strategy we can do through this is actually look at our 2020 emissions and acknowledge that we have a 2045 zero emissions clean economy target. And when I mentioned planning, we need to plan that gap from our 2020 emissions down to that zero emissions mandate by 2045. We can do this by incorporating climate change planning into decision-making processes, including your own at the Land Use Commission, and promote energy conservation and efficiency through our outreach communication and community public engagement, while continuing to invest in the deployment of clean energy technologies to reduce the reliance on our fossil fuels. Of course, the state is beginning to expand the adoption of the zero emission vehicles through the recent purchase of our zero emission vehicle fleet. And we know that other counties, like the County of Hawaii, is beginning to expand into hydrogen zero emission vehicles. We want to promote alternative modes of transportation and reduce the generation of waste, including plastic waste, while increasing the diversion of waste through recycling, reuse, and composting. Moving on to the focus area to improve our climate resilience. We've identified multiple strategies here to integrate climate change adaptation and resilience consideration into planning and implementation. And we can do that through partnerships with the Land Use Commission. When we are making decisions, when our state is making those decisions, we can start integrating those climate adaptive and resilient strategies. Most importantly, as you are well aware, the Land Use Commission has adopted various rules to incorporate climate adaptation in just the review that your agency is conducting. Other strategies are to assess and communicate those impacts of climate change to our residents, businesses, and communities most likely impacted, so that we can identify those vulnerable communities and make sure that we are doing the best we can as government officials to ensure that those vulnerable communities are becoming resilient, and we acknowledge that of their potential impact. We need to implement actions that improve our state's resilience through climate change. This is through opportunities to invest in stronger hurricane shelters, to just strengthen our hurricane shelters to Category 5 hurricane levels, and increase the resilience of vulnerable populations to the impacts of climate change and other shocks and stressors. When we're thinking about these vulnerable communities like Hana, like Wainiha, like Haena, and various landslides that our state assets, like our beautiful mountains, are doing when they have these landslides and cut off the access points.
Danielle,
Yes.
one moment. Dan, you have your hand raised. Oh, you do.
I'm sorry, Chair. I don't know how that happened. I haven't touched my computer.
Okay. Sorry, Danielle.
No problem. I'll try to speed up here.
No, I don't think it was a comment. I think it was just, I don't know what it was. Okay, please continue.
Okay. Moving into focus area of advancing our sustainable communities. This is specifically to look at the urban and built environment. Again, the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has been very strong in pushing, and with the partnership of our county planning departments, we really want to advance smart growth initiatives and multimodal transportation efforts and systems. You can see that through the TOD Council and other various initiatives led and co-led by the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We also want to continue to advance the sustainability in school and university operations. I say this because by 2035, all of our state schools, all public schools in the state of Hawaii, as well as the entire University of Hawaii system, all campuses, need to be net zero. That is one of those sustainability, statutory, and legal mandates pursuant to law. So when we're thinking about opportunities to build new or retrofit our buildings, we really need to start advancing more energy efficiencies, clean renewable energies, and I'll also put in a small caveat of water reclamation while we're thinking of this, because there are these mandates that we need to be net zero in energy by 2035, and all of our state and county buildings need to be recycling its water, with the exception of potable and drinkable water, by the year 2045, so only 10 years after that. So when we're thinking about these opportunities of building and development and expansion of these buildings and the footprints of these buildings, we really need to find opportunities to drive our carbon emissions and our water consumption down while we're doing this through smart investments of energy efficiency, clean and renewable energy, and water reclamation. And we can do this by integrating sustainable design principles into these new and existing buildings. Moving on to the focus area to advance our equity. 2020 was a very challenging year due to COVID-19, and we knew as the state of Hawaii, we heard loud and clear that we need to strengthen our broadband access to support digital learning and online solutions, especially for our rural areas. That connectivity, we need to make sure everybody has equal access to the internet, to Zoom, so that they can participate through government operations such as this hearing. And so we want to definitely support and strengthen broadband access and a landing site for our state. We need to continue to improve the economic and social sustainability of individuals through access to affordable housing. I said it once, I'll say it again. A sustainable Hawaii includes an affordable Hawaii. If we cannot, as residents, afford to live in the state of Hawaii, then we have not achieved the basic needs of sustaining our lives here. We will be moving. And so that brain drain does not help us to achieve the sustainable Hawaii that we all envision. We need to continue to implement strategies that reduce homelessness in Hawaii to advance livelihoods and advance opportunities for all, regardless of gender. Going on to institutionalizing sustainability as a focus area, we need to invest in staff and other resources to coordinate and advance sustainability goals across the state and local governments. As I've mentioned to you, commissioners, the statewide sustainability branch is currently staffed by one employee, and that is me. So when you think of the charge of the statewide sustainability branch, we do need to invest in more than one employee to sustain the sustainability branch, if you will. And also ensure that we are investing in our county governments as well, so that those respective sustainability and climate agencies are also well sustained beyond the 1 and 2 employees that they may have to advance these initiatives throughout our governments. We need to update our state policies to reflect sustainability and climate change priorities. Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, and with the support of our director, Mary Alice Evans, we have been doing that for the last 5 years since in 2017, where we have been strong supporters to update our state policies, inclusive of the Hawaii State Planning Act, to pivot to become and reflect these sustainability and climate change priorities and values that we as a state have. And we need to continue to incorporate sustainability into our government operations. Another focus area to preserve our natural environment, of course, one strategy is to improve water quality through reduced pollution and dumping. We really see this through big rain events and Kona lows right now, when there is just an excess of water during these La Nina time periods, where we have that excess of water and you start seeing more mixture of pollution and various dumping in these water systems. And of course, just knowing our ahupua'a values, that'll go out into the ocean. So we need to continue to strive and reduce those pollution efforts and dumping to preserve and protect our water quality throughout the state. We need to support water reuse strategies as a state to conserve our water. I did mention that through La Nina events, we do have, during the winter seasons, we do have these massive precipitation events, inclusive of the Kona low and what we've seen the last few weeks in the various islands. However, during La Nina events, we also see major drought during our summertime, which leads to wildfire. And we are seeing that in our other islands, specifically Big Island and Maui. So opportunities to reuse our water and strategies to conserve our water are imminent for this decade of action. We need to establish policies to protect our unique marine ecosystems, as well as manage climate change impacts to our marine resources. There are strategies listed in the the Ocean Resource Management Plan that can help us achieve that as well. We can also protect and manage our watersheds. DLNR is doing a fantastic job with partners like Kupu and the Watershed Partnership Program. So we need to continue to put our resources there, and possibly even look at green fees to start financially supporting our watershed management. And we need to continue to adopt strategies that protect our land-based natural resources. Again, when we're thinking about why we live here in Hawaii and why people visit Hawaii, it is because of our beautiful natural system and our natural environment. These land-based natural resources, our water, our beautiful maunas, we need to preserve and protect them and adopt strategies to protect them as well. And continue to conserve working forest landscapes, protect our forests from harm, and enhance public benefits from trees and forests. Finally, the last focus area, it's very, to me, this is of course, this is to perpetuate our traditional and ecological knowledge and values. We need to ground our climate and sustainability strategies in our cultural foundations. We need to remember, for those of us who are not indigenous of this land, we need to remember that this land has been sustainable once before, prior to development, through the ahupua'a systems, through our natural resources. And we need to continue, as we continue to advance and build our urban cores and build communities, that we need to ground these values ground our climate and sustainability strategies in our cultural foundation and perpetuate the TEK and the values of the Hawaiian culture. Okay, so transitioning into specific land use recommended actions. That overview I provided to you of the 38 strategies and the 8 focus areas includes over 262 specific recommended actions. So it's very in depth. And as I was reviewing the plan to provide this presentation to you, commissioners, I identified at least 80 recommended actions for you to consider. So I'm not going to list them line by line, but I was able to identify the specific strategies and the corresponding action identified. Now, again, this goes to the general values that I discussed earlier to continue to support and expand our agricultural economy and provide more agricultural planning and investment to meet our local food security targets. Again, the state of Hawaii is charged to double local food production by 2030. So through these agricultural and economic values, these are strategies that we can achieve. Sustainable crop management practices, sustainable irrigation practices can provide environmental services and co-benefits to protect against soil degradation, providing our greenhouse gas sequestration, which our state is also tasked to achieve, and increase biodiversity in our soil fertility to maintain economic production of crops and animal protein to meet these doubling food production targets, and to continue to support low-E farming to enhance our local foods productivity and growth to protect Hawaii's environment, and ensure the consistent funding for agricultural infrastructure improvements, operations, and maintenance, as well as the purchase of fee interest for available prime agricultural lands before they are subject to non-agricultural development. So you can see there are very specific actions we can take as the state to help get us to these strategies and focus areas. Moving on to some more specific land use recommended actions. When we're thinking about our tourism economy as well as our general economy, there are opportunities where we can grow our priority sectors in healthcare, technology, and skilled trades to expand skilled trades to include sustainable agricultural opportunities, manufacturing, sustainable development, building, and construction. So to really just expand these vocations as we pivot towards that more sustainable outcome we plan to achieve. We need to have more investments in these vocations so that we can ensure that we are recycling water, and we can ensure that we are meeting our state goal to eliminate all cesspools by the year 2050. That's about 88,000 cesspools statewide that we need to eliminate. So there are opportunities when we look at these big sustainability and climate targets, there are opportunities to invest in our vocational training to expand those economic opportunities as well. In terms of our tourism industry, we can continue to protect and enhance the recognition of Hawaii as a green destination by mitigating tourism from a community standpoint in the destination management planning and process statewide to promote Hawaii's sustainability, natural resources, local agriculture, and climate resilience through Hawaii's tourism marketing and branding. And this will contribute to the regeneration of Hawaii's natural beauty resources and culture. When we think about sea level rise adaptation, again, we are islands in the middle of the Pacific. As an archipelago, we need to begin to provide a framework for a comprehensive sea level adaptation and resilience plan. Again, specifically for the Waikiki Special District area. That is something that the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development is very excited to participate in and looks forward to future conversations, especially with the legislature on this matter. Not only do we want to focus on the Waikiki Special District, but we need to look at the entire state as a whole through those managed retreat opportunities. Again, our partners in the coastal zone management program has published a preliminary report on the feasibility of managed retreat in the state of Hawaii. I encourage you to go to the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development's website to take a look at that report. And we want to continue that investigation. And what does it take to when we consider these managed retreat opportunities? Additionally, as I mentioned before, we want to develop a climate action plan. Now that's to drive the greenhouse gas emissions down. When I say climate action plan, that is a mitigation plan. We have our current emission levels measured at 2020, and we have met those levels. Pursuant to law, we have met the requirement of our 1990 emissions, and that is a wonderful success the state of Hawaii has achieved in the year 2020. However, we have a state mandate to drive those emissions down to a zero emissions clean economy target by 2045. So this is a wonderful opportunity to plan between that 2020 measurement to 2045 as how the state of Hawaii can get to that 2045 law. And once we plan it, we can follow up and follow through with the respective actions to get us there. Going into more specific land use recommendations, we need to establish short and long-term benchmarks to indicate how effectively agricultural and aquacultural activities can help us reach that state zero emissions clean economy target by 2045, and explore establishing net zero greenhouse gas emission goals for all projects, including public and infrastructure projects, to help us meet Hawaii's zero emissions clean economy target. This is a large target that we need to achieve by 2045. And so looking into opportunities to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions through all projects and find measurable benchmarks along the way, as well as that climate action plan I talked about, will again help us get there. There are measurements and installments to get to 2045. We can screen projects over a particular size for impact on climate change mitigation, or the achievement of other sustainability goals and targets, such as the ones I've listed in this plan. Of course, thanks to the work of the Land Use Commission, we need to continue to give consideration to climate change planning in our land use planning. We thank you for that leadership to the Land Use Commission, and I want to just echo that leadership through all of our planning agencies statewide. We need to, of course, increase solar and storage battery projects throughout the state. This will help us get down our greenhouse gas emissions, as well as increase statewide rooftop photovoltaic installations when we're considering new developments or redevelopments. And encourage to expand that zero emissions vehicle charging in public areas, commercial areas, workplaces, and households and apartment dwellings. When we're starting to see a lot more zero emission vehicle targets percolate in our statutes. And so we need to also build the infrastructure to encourage our public and encourage our consumers to use those technologies by building charging infrastructure as well as hydrogen charging stations. Going into more specific land use recommendations, we've talked a lot about improving access to energy efficiency, renewable energy, and zero emission vehicle charging stations, also to our rental units and our condos. Implement those expanding infrastructure for ZEVs, zero emission vehicles, to include that energy storage and increasing the availability of electric charging and hydrogen fueling stations. I keep bringing up hydrogen because while we in Oahu may be very interested in electric charging, there are counties within the state of Hawaii, like the County of Hawaii, which is very interested in developing hydrogen zero emission vehicle fleets and hydrogen fueling stations. So I want to be inclusive of that when we're discussing the transition to a zero emission vehicle fleet and zero emission vehicle opportunities. Multimodal systems and connectivity will help improve the pedestrian walkability, bikeability of our communities, as well as bring those greenhouse gas emissions down, and modernize transportation planning to and the projects to enhance the quality for our communities reduction of transportation costs to residents, and minimize injuries and fatalities to improve our public health and quality of life, while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions through these promotion of alternative modes of transportation. We also, when we're thinking about greenhouse gas reduction, specific land use actions we can think of are also to accelerate regional composting statewide. When we're starting to see that our landfills are also providing much of the methane emissions, and of course, methane emissions are far worse than our carbon dioxide emissions. So when we're discussing greenhouse gases, we need to also be mindful of our landfills and accelerate our regional composting statewide, while also expanding opportunities for methane capture in our landfills, waste to energy facilities, as well as wastewater treatment facilities and our anaerobic digesters. The city and county of Honolulu has a pilot project in EVA, which is currently capturing the methane emitted from the wastewater treatment facility. And we can use that methane to convert for renewable natural gas for consumers using natural gases in their homes. We need to, of course, improve interagency and intergovernmental.
Danielle, sorry, if I can just, where are we
Sure.
at in terms of, I know that we normally take a break. Where are we at in terms of your presentation?
We have about 5 slides to go.
Would it be okay to take a break right now and then finish up, or would you like to finish?
I can just speed up if you like, and we can take a
Okay.
break.
Sure.
Okay. So going into the next recommended actions, again, this Office of Planning and Sustainable Development is working to coordinate across agencies for operational responsibilities over state facilities to identify existing and planning facilities that are vulnerable to our climate hazards. And we need to assess the options to increase the resilience of those facilities in our climate area. Another very needed plan that we need to do to continue to conduct our climate adaptation is to develop a statewide climate adaptation and resilience implementation plan. And this is inclusive of the whole state. So we're starting to see our county partners begin to work on that at the county levels. And we would like to adopt such a similar plan for the state. We need to also incorporate regional managed retreat and strategic relocation analysis into our planning. Moving on into other opportunities for recommended actions. Again, we talked about hurricane sheltering, and we want to strengthen hurricane sheltering to the highest degree possible to become more climate resilient, incentivize the use of green roofs, and implement green infrastructure design guidelines and policies, expand on-site rainwater harvesting and stormwater management so that we can continue to reclaim and recycle our water. And we can do this through underground cisterns, as well as eco blocks and eco building development to promote decentralized water and sustainable energy to reduce the development's carbon and water footprints. I believe this is, we're getting close, you know, in terms of land use recommendations, we can look at innovative residential developments which result in lower costs and sustainable use of resources and a more efficient use of land and infrastructure and greater convenience to privacy. And we can continue to update the Hawaii State Planning Act to reflect these current policies, specifically the state functional plans, with a particular focus on energy, agriculture, conservation, recreation, transportation, and tourism to, again, modernize those functional plans to meet 21st century needs and sustainability and climate change targets. So when we're thinking about these land use recommended actions, again, we need to think of our sustainability and climate statutory targets. I mentioned before a 2050 cesspool reduction requirement where all cesspools need to be eliminated by the year 2050. So when we're looking at various communities and development opportunities, we need to start thinking of that statutory requirement when we're providing this planning and develop the infrastructure to support the elimination of those cesspools. So, Chair, I just want to finish. As you know, I provided this presentation and we did want to make it comprehensive for the Land Use Commission because we find this to be very fitting with the many challenges the Commission faces. And so I hope this presentation was of benefit to the Land Use Commission. We want to end with this call to action. We have 8 years in this decade of action declared by the United Nations, 8 years till 2030. That is so short, and we have so much to do. And how we can get there while looking at our 8 focus areas, our 38 strategies, and our over 262 recommended actions, we can get there through strategic prioritization of investments, integrating our knowledge and work across all of Hawaii sectors, through that CACO opportunity. We are just, there's only 1 million of us, 1.4 million of us throughout the state, and we must work together to achieve all of these statutory requirements of the state of Hawaii. We also need to continue to develop those metrics to enable measurement and tracking of progress so that we know we can achieve our 2030 laws by 2030 and have that realistic timeline to work toward. So with that, mahalo for this opportunity to speak. I'm sorry this presentation took so long. I would encourage land use commissioners and members of the public who are watching this to visit our website, https://hawaii2050.hawaii.gov, and definitely look at our fun interactive version, hawaii2050.hawaii.gov/interactive. If anyone has any questions, I'm available for questions, and mahalo for this opportunity to present.
Thank you so much. Such an incredible and thorough presentation. So I'm really excited for the conversation. So I just want to give commissioners 10 minutes, which we always do every hour, and then come back for the robust discussion. Is that okay? Does that work? Excellent. Okay, it is 10:02. We will reconvene at 10:12. Okay, it's 10:12. We're back in session and on the record. Commissioners, questions for OPSD, Danielle and Mary Alice on the presentation. I will start off by sharing that I had the honor and pleasure of serving as the facilitator for the virtual meetings on this project. So it was really an excellent process. I enjoyed it greatly. Commissioner Chang.
Thank you very much, Danielle. I am so impressed with your obvious passion, and the presentation was extremely comprehensive. Thank you so very much. Given you're an office of one, it is quite amazing what you've been able to do. So congratulations to you and all the efforts. I have 3 questions, and I'll just pose them to you, and then you can take them and respond to them. The first is, are these strategies listed in a priority, or are they given equal weight and consideration? Because I do notice kind of like the Hawaiian values are sort of the last one, but so just kind of, the second question is, how do you balance sometimes what I would call competing sustainable goals? For example, and this comes through for the Land Use Commission, we have use of ag lands for renewable energy projects. Much of your presentation dealt with the importance of ag lands, and totally support that. But we have a lot of these, and as you can see, several solar projects are coming before us, and many of them are using ag lands. So is there some guidance that you can provide us on what is, have you guys looked at that, and how do we address that? And I think I only had actually those are the 2 questions I have right now. So your thoughts or your responses?
Thank you, Commissioner. Mahalo for your supportive words. Thank you so much. In terms of priority, they are of equal value. So unfortunately, you just have to put numbers to things to make it digestible to the public. And by no means do I want to, I come from very strong Hawaiian values from my aunties and my family. So I would never want to, perpetuating traditional ecological knowledge and values or Hawaiian culture as last. So by all means, they are not prioritized. They are just listed and they have equal value. In terms of the competing uses of land, I very much understand the challenges ahead. And I think that this is going to be a constant for the state of Hawaii because we are limited in land, as you well know. The 4 million acres, that is the beauty as well as the challenge of Hawaii. And we have these sustainability challenges. This has come up many times in my conversations with the state legislature. And this is a passionate issue. Of course, we need to continue to preserve and protect our agricultural operations as well as expand that economy, and the challenge of providing affordable housing to our residents, as well as providing that clean energy, through solar farms on our ag lands. This is all a constant challenge. I very much understand, and I have mentioned that many times to our policymakers and our decision makers. So I agree. This will, in terms of that challenge, it will be a constant. That's just because of the scarcity of our land. That is a constant. And in terms of energy versus ag, of course, our agricultural lands are protected through the Constitution and, of course, the public trust doctrines. So in terms of energy, what I really do appreciate from various energy developers is when they have agricultural plans for those lands and how they can expand and provide kind of a coexistence of agricultural opportunities as well as energy land use for those hypothetical proposed developments is something I support.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the response.
Thank you, Commissioner Chang. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yeah, I have a question. I was looking at strategy 10 in your outline and your action 75. It talks about the sustainability analysis in all projects over a certain amount. Has your department fleshed out what size projects would be interested, what types of projects would be part of it, what types would be exempt from sustainability analysis? Or is that something that we want to do in the future and modify it, put it in some omnibus bill?
That's a great question, and I believe that's a part of the transition. So first and foremost, it's in thanks to the Land Use Commission changing their rules to also provide that sustainability analysis and climate change analysis in the proposed developments before the commissions for future decisions. But in terms of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, I just need to remind that this branch has only been in existence for about 1.5 years and is only staffed by one individual. So it is definitely the intent of this branch to provide the sustainability and climate resilience analyses in reviews. However, due to a limitation in capacity and staffing, that is a problem for us. So it is a part of our transition. That is where, as the administrator of this branch, that is where I see this branch going. And that is why in our budgetary requests, I have requested, and the director, of course, has supported this request, the need for sustainable land use planners for our branch so that we can provide those reviews.
As it stands now, maybe I'm not as familiar with that portion of the analysis, but what type of projects would not include that type of analysis?
Interesting. This branch supports the entire state, right? So I actually get calls from many agencies to include not limited to, the Hawaii Tourism Authority, DLNR, and things like that. And so we are starting to see this transition. And so For instance, there have been a few land leases before the DLNR for renewal, and the DLNR has asked for a quick consult on, the zero emissions clean economy. Should we as a state, extend a land lease for a fossil fuel entity beyond 2045 if we have a zero emissions clean economy? Now, of course, the Board of Land and Natural Resources made that decision, but they contacted this branch in terms of just reaffirming what these sustainability laws and targets are, so that they can try to align these legal targets in their decision-making processes. So this is something, of course, that I cannot right now provide at a complete statewide level, since it is just me. But there are times where state agencies, inclusive of the Land Use Commission, has contacted me for quick consults on some of these projects before you, as well as the DLNR and the Hawaii Tourism Authority. So we're starting to see a lot of that begin.
What I'm concerned about, or what I've thought about, is this: use special use permits to grant landfills, and it comes with all kinds of bells and whistles now. Landfills, car wrecking, or car stripping, or car storage, and battery storage, and all these types of activities along with it. My question is that from a sustainable planning view, what should we be looking at in these special use permits that all counties are asking for landfills? And what kind of analysis with the sustainability kind of, I guess, what would be a sustainability analysis of those types of projects? Maybe it's too specific, but that's my question.
I'm just trying to, unfortunately in my audio, you're cutting in and out. So I'll try to respond to the best that I can. To the point of the recyclability and the sustainability of some of these waste products, like EV batteries, et cetera, there are, we've actually identified that as a policy issue this last year.
I don't, maybe you're cutting in and out, but my real question is this, is that we give these special use permits for landfills, and it comes with all of these other kinds of things nowadays, with recycling equipment, and sludge, spreading out of sludge, and all this kind of things. The question that I have is, from a sustainability point of view, how should we be dealing with these types of projects? And I understand if we haven't federated it all out, but I was just trying to get a handle on how we're going to do that in the future, or is that part of review? Because that's, I can see how we do it for solar arrays and solar farms and for projects that deal with large tracts of land that want to do in housing and things like that. But I have the ones that affect the environment the most, it appeared, and are the landfills, it would appear, in terms of getting rid of our waste. So I was just wondering if there's any specific kind of targeting, or anybody doing anything, or is there any kind of guidance that OPSD will give to us about dealing with these projects within the framework of sustainability? I know it's a long question. That's a direction. I'm just curious.
Hey, Alice, I saw that you unmuted. Would you like to begin? I do have a comment, but it seems to me that you might want to respond to.
Commissioner Ohigashi, a couple of things. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has already started to provide comments on climate change and sustainability when we are asked, as we always are, to comment on environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. So that's now part of what gets incorporated into environmental assessments and environmental impact statements for all projects that have a trigger for those disclosure documents. And some of those come to the Land Use Commission as the first discretionary permit for a project. So you will get an assessment of the impact of the project on our climate change goals and our sustainability goals in that disclosure document before you reach a discretionary phase of your consideration of applications and petitions. Another thought that comes to mind, and I think you probably know this already, is that each proposal is different. And so the application of a sustainability or climate change impact assessment is going to vary by the type of project that is being proposed for a special permit. And the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development will provide, as you know, now that's part of our statute and part of your rules, those assessments, but it'll be on a project by project basis rather than sort of a general sense of you know, one size fits all on these. Does that help answer your question, Commissioner Ohigashi?
Well, maybe I'm just looking for specifics and trying to deal with some of the issues that come up in front of us. Like, for example, a special use permit, you know, rock crushing.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of sustainability, is that the question is, are we have enough rocks? Or when does it reach the completion, and how far do we have to go? I'm just curious as to how this I guess this process or this view would apply in these specific kinds of areas like special use permits that are not are just like are considered, to me, I consider them like spot zoning, that you're allowing a special activity in that particular area. And so that's just my curiosity.
Add two more things to your question, Commissioner Ohigashi. In terms of the landfill hypothetical issue, I think from a sustainability standpoint, what we can look at in terms of guidance is the statutory target. Now, it's been codified years and years ago, and it does frankly need updating. And we have testified to that effect to the legislature. There is a statewide recycling goal that the state has. And I've actually published that in the plan. It's on page 14, and it's by the year 2000. The state must recycle or must divert and reduce the solid waste stream by 50% for the entire state on all of our county and our islands. And so 2000, yes. And that is why when we looked at that law, and this is, you know, we worked with the Department of Health, of course, they're the executing authority on that one. But when we were looking at that law, there's a bit of frustration with it. For instance, it's the year 2000 and we're well into 2022. But we published that because it almost serves as a reminder to our policymakers that that's still on the books. And this is an opportunity where we can actually update that, you know, pick your year, maybe not 2030, but look at ways we can increase that 50% target to 75% so that we can continue that goal to reduce and divert our waste stream, right? Because ultimately, we, you know, the landfill issue has been a long ongoing issue, to your point. And these are huge sources of methane greenhouse gas emissions, which are substantially more than the carbon dioxide that our state emits, right? So they have a larger global warming potential. Methane is much more detrimental than carbon dioxide. And so as we continue to strive and work through these, I'd be glad to even remind the Land Use Commission of that law. And we can start working with the Department of Health on that. That is a frustration that even their agency would like to see some updating of that law, as well as the integrated solid waste management plan. So these are things that we learned through this comprehensive review.
And just one other thing I wanted to ask you about this. You indicated the CZMA, the Coastal Zone Management Area, would be the lead area as in the coastal zone management and sustainability. Are there anything is your office considering amendments to the coastal zone management law, CZMA law,
Commissioner Ohigashi?
regarding further development on coastline?
The legislature made a significant change to Chapter 205A 2 years ago, not this last session, but the previous one, that significantly strengthened the provisions for banning hardening of shorelines for private property, and we just managed to get the rules through the public outreach process, and the governor has adopted those rules. We're now promulgating and educating the county's planning departments on the effect of those rules. So I think the Coastal Zone Management Program is always open to new management measures that will help strengthen the protections for our shoreline and coastal resources. But the legislature hasn't been sleeping. They have been very active in taking a look at that and reassessing what's needed to keep up with climate change and sea level rise, especially for coastal zone areas.
Specifically, that law that Mary Alice was referencing is Act 16, 2020. And in that same year, that is when the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development's roles and responsibilities were equally changed to expand our ocean resource and coastal work to include sea level rise adaptation coordination in HRS 225M-2B via Act 45, 2020. So both happened at the same time.
So I'm going to tell you the bottom line of my question is whether or not those requirements under the Coastal Zone Management Law are something that the counties will have to consider, the sustainability issues that you're presenting to us today under this plan. Is that something that the counties have to address within the Coastal Zone Management area? That's what that's the direction. So in other words, I know that Maui is a contested case proceeding from the Planning Commission, and I'm not aware of whether or not they have to, within their review of the SMA area, will they be required to address the sustainability issues that have been brought forth in the plan?
Commissioner,
I understand that. That's my question.
I'm going to try to answer that, although you may not appreciate the answer. The Coastal Zone Management Program is a partnership between the federal, state, and county governments. And the county governments are bound by the state law, Chapter 205A, and the rules that have been adopted by the governor to implement those new changes. And but the counties themselves can adopt ordinances and apply their own process to implementing that state law. So there is differences between the counties in how they approach that. Maui County is actually one of the more, in terms of their ordinances, one of the more assertive counties in implementing the coastal zone management law. But in terms of very specific issues, and we are aware of one that's coming from Maui County, you know, that becomes a, you know, was both the state law and rules and the county ordinances, implementing ordinances followed. And that's a decision that the county needs to make.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. Or that part. I'm just curious as to whether or not, for example, like following up on my previous question where you want a sustainability analysis on projects before the Land Use Commission, and which I don't think it's in the special use permits review that we do, but I just was curious whether that sustainability analysis would be in the CZM or the SMA review area, and that's what my question was.
When the Office of Sustainable Planning and Sustainable Development gets a request for comments on a project that falls under the shoreline management area or the CZM area, which is the whole state, we do comment on sustainability of the proposal, and we comment on the climate change impact of the proposal.
But that's only if you get a comment. Does the law mandate
No, the law
agencies such as the Land Use Commission, the Planning Commissions, and the various agencies to take the sustainability plan into account, making its determination?
I think the implementation is through the 150 laws and rules and the strategic plans that the 2050 plan is, I think, incredibly helpful in listing. I think this is the first time that all of those statutory requirements and strategic plans have been shown in one place to show how thoroughly and aggressively the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, the legislature, our state agencies, and have worked to incorporate sustainability into our future going forward. Danielle, would you like to expand on that?
I also want to give an opportunity for their commissioners' questions. So
Sorry, Chair.
Danielle?
No, Mary Alice, you summarized it very well, and we'll move on to the next question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Executive Officer Ordenker, then Commissioner Cabral. Or did you inadvertently raise your hand again, Dan? Okay. Oh, we need to get you back into the office. Damn this Omicron. Okay. Commissioner Cabral, followed by Commissioner Giovanni.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, Danielle and Mary Alice, I mean, unbelievably fantastic report. And it's great because you truly have listed, I can't even think of what you might have missed here. But I got to tell you, because I'm in Hilo and you don't know what I do, but I manage properties and I have for 40 years. So I'm sort of in the trenches of a lot of the things you made comments of. Particularly, I have a lot of opinions about affordable housing and why we have problems there. And a huge number of that problem involves the government. And a lot of it involves the government and then also status quo. And I got to tell you, it's a whole lot more effort's going to have to go into it beyond one staff member. I mean, Danielle, you're fantastic, but unless we've got an army of about 1,000 of you out there, and we have a committed legislature and a committed population, I don't even have a question except to question the entire, sort of talks cheap and one employee is cheap compared to what it's going to take. And I see it in my buildings. I would much rather not recycle my air conditioners now every 12 years. The old ones used to last, I'm talking $500,000 air conditioners, not small rubbish. And instead, the old stuff used to last me 20, 30 years. Now I'm every 12 years, I get to buy a new one. They last half as long, but they cost me twice as much. And it's because we're buying cheap steel from China, thank you. And so it's such a huge problem. And I think about the ability, and I manage condominiums. Everybody wants me to put in those, charging stations, but every single stall is assigned to somebody. What do I do? You've got huge obstacles. I mean, and until lots of things are willing to give in, including, so I think a lot of it, and I didn't really hear it in there, but I think the government, if we're going to get serious, is going to have to, so maybe that would be not a question, but adding in that you've got to give tax incentive to developers, tax incentive to property managers, to condominiums, to building owners and stuff, to make those changes. And I mean, I've done it. I think I've probably put in more photovoltaic in Hilo than anybody except from the University of Hawaii at Hilo. I've got all kinds of it, and it's been fantastic, especially when I had net metering. Yes, but they don't have net metering now. So we got to look at the system, and a lot of people are going to have to give up on the old ways and the old money and the old everything else. And you got to get part of what I would recommend too is have some kind of a campaign, a newspaper constant. You got to get the citizens enraged about this in some way, shape, or form, so that they either force their legislators to be willing to prioritize some of this money and give up on some of the tax money, et cetera, and change some of the focus of what we're doing, or elect new people. I mean, I don't see anything happening. Very little. God bless you. I mean, we're already doing a little bit. The list is long though. I mean, because I live it. I'm over here and I would love to do everything the right way, but it ends up, I don't have a lot of choices sometimes. So wish I had a question. I just have complete worry. So God bless you. Good luck.
Any responses to Commissioner Cabral?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Cabral. Mahalo for your support again. We have a budget briefing before the legislature later today and tomorrow regarding our budget proposal to staff up the statewide sustainability branch. And, bless your heart, I would just love to take what you said and just testify to that. So, but, on the terms of transition, absolutely, I hear you. And we, the only way to, get a positive transition and have the public turn so rapidly in the next 8 years is through tax credits and various incentives. And so, we're seeing that in policy discussions, and definitely the branch and the Office of Supply and Sustainable Development strongly supports incentivization programs. There's one in terms, of course, with renewable energy opportunities and energy efficiency opportunities, but also through greenhouse gas sequestration, where we want to incentivize even our farmers to sequester greenhouse gases through their day-to-day, business operations, and provide those incentives. So the way to get there is definitely through government incentivization, and our office strongly supports that, and we will continue to testify to that effect. In terms of just the development of the branch, we really wanted to just use 2050 as a quick baseline so that we can finally have a sustainability and climate strategic action plan. There's more planning to be done, yes. However, this is a good launching point. We have 8 years. We have a collective target. We have an area to strive to between now and 2030. And really how I look at it is this just continue to build capacity, and through the tremendous amount of work, not only the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has, but this branch, we can just continue to build and build and build, so that by 2030, when we hit these targets and laws, as well as the update of this plan, hopefully we've achieved a good amount of these priorities from the state, as well as from our own office and this plan. So thank you again.
Yeah, and you know, too, then maybe there's more ways, especially I'm old, so I'm not into social media things, but there might be things, you know, way that you can get more citizens to get hold of their legislatures. You got to package it. I mean, you got to spoon feed me and I will respond and contact my people if you spoon feed me with how to get in touch with them, what their connection is and what to refer to, you know. I mean, getting hold of them and saying, oh, make our environment nicer is, you know, doesn't really tell them what to do. So that's a whole nother branch of how to make this happen, but God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
mentioned
Commissioner.
that's a part of our transition as OPSD is we've learned very rapidly with all of this, you know, extra responsibility on climate change, sustainability, sea level rise, that we need to communicate a lot more. And so this office full of planners are now, we're kind of double hatting now and working on, you know, learning how we can be better communicators. And, you know, through social media, we have our e-newsletter and we're really trying, but we're all not communication professionals either, nor do we employ a PAO. So, you know, it's something that I, you know, Mary Alice can agree, I'm sure she'll agree to this, that it's something I've taken on in this role to really continue that communication outreach and expand that. And I think, you know, when I think about all the other partnering programs within our office, that's something that we're all really just transitioning towards and, you know, pivoting on right now.
Okay,
Thank
good,
you.
good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Danielle. Commissioner Giovanni, followed by Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I'd like to caution you that not to take my comments that I'm about to make too personally, because in general, I'm very much appreciative of the effort you've put forth and recognize that you are operating as a one-person department or branch, and you've done amazing work. So I concur with my fellow commissioners in their compliments for the work that you've done to date. And I very much appreciate the passion and the personal effort that you've brought to the job. Thank God you found some budget money for ICF to help you on the consulting side, or we wouldn't even be at ground zero yet for this effort. So it's typical, I find, and this is a very personal comment, for starting new initiatives and then not funding them or staffing them appropriately to get things done. And what I find as a consequence of that is you've done a very good job informationally and in waving the flag. But I'm about specifics and I'm about measurable accomplishments. And I think that in the absence of you being able to build a staff and commit to doing work on a proactive basis, it's just going to be more flag waving, and I think that will be a disappointment for me personally and maybe for the state. So now my specific comments. I find it, you are correct that in our rules for the Land Use Commission, on a docket by docket basis, we have to give consideration to sustainability and climate change and sea level rise, depending on the docket itself. And the State Office of Planning and Sustainable Development is a party to virtually every docket and every declaratory petition that comes before us. And for us to have to make a proactive request for OPSD to actually comment on sustainability issues doesn't seem appropriate to me. It ought to be automatic in my mind. So let me explore this request mechanism a little bit further. How is it that if we had a docket that came before us that had significant, in my mind, aspects to it that involve sustainability issues, how do we get you to comment on it on a timely basis? What do we need to do today with you as a one-person staff for that to happen? How does it work?
Chair, can I start that answer?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. What the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development does is we collate comments from all the state agencies, the county agencies, and the various programs in the office into one document. And that, well, that would be both a statement of position and then testimony on a docket. And so there, I think starting fairly recently, there is a section on sustainability or sea level rise if the particular petition has a sea level rise component to it. Sustainability is a little harder because it's so broad, but I think you're going to find that we are incorporating that now, that we have set up a system where the petitions are circulated to our staff as well as the other state agencies and the county agencies, so that Danielle has an opportunity to provide input when she has the time. And that's why we're making a budget request for additional staff that I am hoping that the legislature will consider approving to provide you with that specific kind of input that we want to give you and that you're asking for.
So thank you, Mary Alice. I am familiar with the general process by which OPSD provides a statement of position and testimony. But I heard this morning in your presentations that unless Danielle is specifically requested by an agency such as the Land Use Commission to comment, that she doesn't have the wherewithal to do that. So it's not happening. And to be honest, I haven't seen it appear in your testimony or your statements of position. A voice on these issues doesn't come regularly. We have to cull them out. So when in the process do we have to cull them out? Maybe a question to our executive director. If I see a docket that's coming before us a month from now, do I have to make a request 3 weeks in advance to make sure that Danielle weighs in on important issues to us? Because to have it show up in the midst of a hearing is too late, maybe too late.
We'll take your concern and try to figure out how to get that called out for you. When we get comments from the Department of Health, for instance, DLNR, for instance, sometimes they're not labeled with sustainability, but they address the issues of clean water, clean air, recycling, and composting. What we'll try to do to make that easier to find is to maybe put those under a sustainability category for you. Would that be helpful?
That would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, now I'd like to be a little more positive and a little more constructive for your benefit. I understand you've got a briefing tomorrow on the budget request that you're making. Is there maybe this is a question to our chair or to our executive director, is there anything formative that this commission can do, even today, to offer, if we agree and a majority of the commissioners agree, to actually lend a voice of support for the initiative or for the budget request that's going forward? Can we do something like that as a commission today?
I'm going to defer on that to your chair.
Yes.
Asked it to the chair.
Yes, we can. Absolutely. And actually, this is agendized in a matter that if we wanted to take a vote on some kind of statement, we'd be able to do so today.
Could I make a motion to that?
If it's okay, Commissioner Giovanni, I'd rather have all of the commissioners have a chance to ask questions first. Before we consider any action. And I have some of my own.
Okay, that sounds fine. I would appreciate that opportunity when the time is right.
Absolutely.
Question for Danielle. So there's a real difference, again, between general strategic goals and specific targets, as I'm sure you know. And if you look at this state's efforts to reduce its importation and consumption of fossil fuels. It has acted in demonstratively different ways when it deals with the energy sector and it deals with the transportation sector, both of which, going back 10 years, consume the equal amount of fossil fuels. Now, granted, it's much more difficult in the transportation sector to come up with something specific. But the state policy was transformed into a statute that required specific levels of reductions of and conversion to renewable energy, if you will, from fossil fuel energy in the energy sector. But still today, in the transportation sector, and even in what you presented to us today, it's like, we're going to support the adoption. What the hell is that? That's nothing. Unless we have direct measurable goals and hold people accountable to those goals, it's going to be a slow and long process. So what is your view of, you just heard my view, what is your view to getting something more substantive that can have more force behind it to such that your goals are actually achieved in this state?
I appreciate the question, Commissioner Giovanni. Thank you. You know, we are seeing a lot more of the ZEV policies come out. Specifically, there was a ZEV, zero emission vehicles. And we saw passage of mandates for the state fleets that was enacted last year. So of course, those are statutory commitments we need to meet by 2035 and 2030 respectively. And so there was discussion at the legislative level of making a mandate on the public and the general economy to also convert to zero emission vehicles. Now that policy discussion did die in the last year. However, from my communication from energy or clean energy advocates, there is discussion of a push for that again. It sounds as if they want a mandate to mandate our residents and the members of the public in our counties to abide by a zero emission vehicle conversion standard. So there will be, I do anticipate some policy discussion to that effect this coming year. Whether or not it'll pass is of course up to the will of the legislature. In terms of the market conversion, you know, I am encouraged that, of course, the Biden administration, the federal government has made these mandates on our vehicle companies developing these new clean fleets. So you're starting to see major commitments by entities like GMC and Ford to have either 100% or 80% of the vehicles that they produce be clean energy by 2030 or 2035 respectively to the company's commitment. So I am encouraged by that market transition thanks to that federal mandate. It appears though that these mandates and again incentives, to Commissioner Cabal's point earlier, is going to be necessary so that we get to this pivot and we do make these transitions necessary by 2030. And yes, you are absolutely right. Those commitments in our transportation sector is lacking. And we have seen a strong history in terms of the energy sector in specific to energy efficiency and consumption be very, very, robust in the state of Hawaii for the last decade and a half. And so now we're seeing very much that pivot locally here to focus on that transportation sector, to your point.
Are you familiar with what might be happening in terms of taxation that might play into moving the transportation sector forward? I know that there was some work being done to evaluate a shift in tax policy from gasoline tax to road tax that would some way indirectly foster the adoption. Or is that an area in which your branch gets involved in dealing with those tax studies or issues?
Yes, to a certain extent, we do testify on those matters before the legislature when there are tax proposals. There were some discussions of carbon taxes, for instance, and our office was very vocal on that. This branch was very vocal on that, since we did publish a carbon offset feasibility study for the state to review, and did in that study explore a small potential of carbon tax, although the Energy Office has since published a separate study on carbon taxation. To that point, we are, the barrel tax is serving for the state of Hawaii as a carbon tax, specifically to vehicles. And when we do have that conversation with policymakers, specifically the energy and environmental policymakers within the legislature, they do make statements that the barrel tax is serving as an informal carbon tax. There are pushes and requests from members of the public to expand that, because there are exemptions to that barrel tax. So yes, in terms of policy discussions before the legislature, our branch, our office definitely does weigh in and provide information that can help support the legislature make their decisions, as well as certain positions on trajectories, so that we can meet the targets codified by the legislature.
Let me shift gears just a little bit, but still talking about state agencies. The Public Utility Commission was instrumental in moving forward energy policy to become renewable energy policy. What is your relationship in working with the Public Utility Commission?
Actually, we do work with them closely on areas where they ask for our help. One of those areas is on the proposal before the PUC to repower and expand the geothermal plant on Hawaii Island. And we are aware that you have a IAL project proposal for Kauai that has been deferred because of the need to discuss how KIUC's renewable energy goals will interact with that. As you know, Commissioner, the PUC has a contested case hearing process like the Land Use Commission. So it's a very structured decision-making process, and we do help out, but usually not through the docket process. We did when Leo Asuncion was our director, and now he's a PUC commissioner. So we do have, that opportunity sometimes to provide supportive help, but it isn't a direct. We're not a mandatory party in the case of the PUC. We can be an intervener when the issues before the PUC are ones that are important for sustainable development.
So other than contested case hearings that are driven by the PUC, do you work with the PUC on any other formative matters?
Not as a constant or regular thing, but on a case-by-case basis.
When requested, I presume.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. And thank you, Danielle, for your hard work. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Okuda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Bass, I echo everybody's compliments on your work. If I can just ask a ministerial question, can you provide us with the approval of your director that list of land use recommendations? Because I might want to use it as a cheat sheet in future cases to make sure I personally remember some of the things that you pointed out. So if I can make that request, if it's okay with your branch and your division. But I have a follow-up question, or a question which follows up what the line of questions that Commissioner Giovanni was asking. And it's also informed by what happened at the last hearing regarding the Kihei High School. And maybe this is better directed at the director. I heard you say that the office oftentimes act as a collator of information being provided by other departments. My question is basically this: is your office, number one, the watchdog, number two, the collator, or number three, the watchdog only if we ask you to be the watchdog? And when I say watchdog, I mean watchdog of the statutes, the public policy as stated in the different plans, and the watchdog of whether or not other state agencies are frankly telling us the truth.
Commissioner, I would say, first of all, we do more than collate. We look at what the input from the other state agencies and county agencies, and if it's not consistent with what our statute and your statute requires, we don't just cut and paste it into our position statement and testimony. So to that extent, I think you would say, I would say, I believe we fit more your watchdog one. Now, in terms of determining if a input from a state agency is true or not, we don't have the capacity to act as an independent investigative entity. We're planners, and that, kind of a, sort of, we do try to do ground truthing for projects to, in other words, we're not just accepting what we're told, but we don't have the capacity to ensure that what a state agency is providing us is completely accurate in all respects. So I'd have to limit that. We have a limited capacity too. We're, not staffed up for the level that you might hope for.
Yeah, and I don't want to go over things that have already been covered and decided by the commission, but I just like to say, I think the watchdog function is really important, and I'm not personally suggesting any type of additional investigation or anything like that, but at minimum, the watchdog function should include watching over and evaluating what is actually filed and included in the public document and public record rather, or the public docket. And if issues are shown there where there's contradictory or perhaps less than credible filings by a state agency, we on the commission shouldn't be functioning as the public prosecutor. I would hope that the lawyers that represent the Office of State Planning, and in fact, all the lawyers involved in the proceeding, actually point out these types of issues. But in any event, that's maybe more of a comment. And thank you for the clarification about the watchdog and the collator. And I'm glad it's more than just being a collator. May I ask this to Ms. Bass as far as this? Ms. Bass, I listened to you talk about gender equity and things like that. Can I ask your comment on this? Where do you think the issue of early childhood education falls within sustainability goals?
Thank you, Commissioner Okuda. In terms of early childhood education, while the state of Hawaii has not formally adopted that initiative as a potential sustainability or climate target, this is when I would encourage the use of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals as that framework. And so the United Nations, when they adopted those 17 Sustainable Development Goals for a more robust, better, sustainable future by 2030, there is a specific goal for quality education, and that's included in our state, in our plan. And so I would qualify that particular initiative to be kind of placed in that goal, if you will, using that United Nations Sustainable Development Goals framework. So to provide quality education to ensure that our public are well educated and informed for that better sustainable, that better tomorrow, if you will. So the United Nations has been very vocal about that.
And related to that, can you comment on what place or role does providing early childhood care or childhood care play with respect to sustainability?
Yes, so in terms of sustainability, when you're thinking of that very large word, you want to achieve three basic pillars, a balance of three pillars. So that is the environment, the economy, as well as the social equity of the society. And so when you're thinking about the social equity pillar in sustainability, that's where I would qualify that. And of course, you wouldn't, if we aren't thinking about early childhood education and the provision for child care to alleviate a specific gender, predominantly women, when we're thinking of that, if we're not alleviating them from that additional stresses, we're not getting that gender equity. And so that it would translate into the social equity pillar of the basic fundamental of sustainability.
And I hope this is my final question, which is a follow-up on one of the themes that Commissioner Giovanni was raising. And I hate to keep hearkening back to Kihei High School, but that's kind of like in my recent thoughts. How do you get the state bureaucracy or these other bureaucrats to actually even comply with not only sustainability goals, but just the law? I mean, it gets to be a little bit disheartening when it seems like no matter what an agency rules or says, or what statutes the legislature points out, or frankly, how much everybody screams and shouts, we're going to be term limited out and we ain't going to be around in the future, but these bureaucrats are going to stay there. And so it's almost like, what do we have to do to get these entrenched bureaucrats, where we could even make the editorial comment, maybe that money should be put into classroom teaching and not these bureaucrats, but what do we have to do to get people to follow or implement these goals, which the lawmakers are saying, must be implemented? What do we have to do?
Yes, I very much appreciate that question, and I get that question a lot. I will first and foremost say that I have zero enforcement power as the state sustainability coordinator, and the branch was not provided enforcement authorities over any of the sustainability and climate targets codified by the state legislature. To that end, we do have these mandates. And so in the development of this position and the branch and the roles of the branch in the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, thankfully, we are a centralized agency. Thankfully, we are allowed, we are empowered with collaboration, and we are empowered with mandates for state agencies to cooperate with our office. So that's all within the far more fundamental laws of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. And I think that that is something strategic and beneficial to the state sustainability branch to use that right now. And to that point, you know, in that coordination, in that statewide cooperation, we can work with those state agencies, albeit there are problems. The statutory sustainability mandate to divert and recycle waste 50% by the year 2000 is troublesome, right? And there's questionable enforcement of that. And, you know, the Department of Health is primarily entrusted with that work. However, there are what is beneficial here, and I think that that's where we can begin by communicating, by outreach, and by just engagement to let our state and county partners know that this branch exists, number one, and is two, charged with the laws, that we need to make sure that we are making progress towards these statutory laws. That's codified within the branch's establishment. Secondly, it's that coordination and cooperation. So when we're engaging with entities like the Department of Education on whether or not they can achieve 30% local food procurement by the year 2030, that is something, you know, just having a voice and a position dedicated by the state of Hawaii in this role to consistently, through the turnover of various leaderships and transitions due to retirement, to just have that one piece of stability through this job to tell that department, are you aware that by 2030 you need to hit this 30% local food procurement goal? You know, in terms, when we're thinking of, yes, go ahead.
We're at another hour mark, so summarize your response.
Yeah, Chair,
I think that engagement, though, is very beneficial, and the enforcement I'm starting to see lies at the legislative level, where they start asking for that accountability with those departments and agencies which are required to achieve these goals. For instance, UH to be zero or net zero energy by 2035. There are reporting requirements to the legislature on that. So there is some enforcement and there is accountability to that. Right now it's predominantly directed to the legislature. There are no enforcement powers to this branch.
Thank you very much for your testimony and your answer. You have actually answered a question that I asked at the Mauna Kea hearing to my friends who oppose the telescopes, which was whether or not you support the telescope or not. The question really is, what do we have to do to keep our kids in Hawaii because they're leaving because they feel there's no future? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Okuda. Commissioner Giovanni, were you raising your hand in order to sort of make a motion?
No, I have a
follow-up
question, but I could take it if you want to later, if you want to recess.
I think we need a recess with the indulgence of the commission. I know I just had a couple of quick follow-up questions really that started with your line of questioning, Commissioner Giovanni. And I don't know if Commissioner Axon, you had anything you wanted to ask? No. With the commission's indulgence, it's 11:18. Let's reconvene at 11:28, and then we'll. My goal is to wrap up by noon. So, 10-minute recess. Okay, we're back on the record. Commissioner Giovanni.
Thank you, Chair, and I beg the indulgence of everyone, but this matter is pretty important to me, and I appreciate the additional time we might spend on it, but here I go. So first of all, Ms. Bass, let me put forth an inference I've drawn, and you tell me if I'm correct, and if I'm not, would you please correct me? And it has to do with the funding that you received that enabled you to hire a consultant. My assumption is that that was funds that were discretionary within the Office of Planning and not necessarily a line item budget issue. Is that correct?
Those funds were appropriated by the passage of Act 146, 2019 as a separate appropriation, not included as a line item to the budget. And the funds that were appropriated by the state legislature were $150,000.
So have you used all those funds?
Yes, I did. We did receive an administrative holdback as well. And I must say, I'm very thankful to Mary Alice as the director, because due to that administrative holdback, it would actually bring the 150 down to about 135. So this is a very low cost for a very comprehensive 10-year strategic action plan. 150 was low. So what Mary Alice did was she dipped into the Office of Planning's budget to provide me with the additional 15,000. We did appropriate all of the money, and in fact, I do believe that the contractor went above and beyond the amount that was requested and provided by the Office of Planning.
So in your forthcoming budget request, are you requesting any additional dollars for outside support, or just the funding for the positions?
In our budget request, what was approved by the governor in the administrative budget is 4 positions. 1 sustainable land use planner, 2 sustainability and climate specialists, which will be exempt positions, and 1 greenhouse gas sequestration specialist. And there were no additional budget requests approved in the administrative budget beyond that.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
I would certainly welcome additional funding if provided by the legislature.
Did you ask for it and it was refused by the governor's office?
Commissioner, no, the budget guidelines that which come out in August every year from the governor's office, produced by the Department of Budget and Finance. As you remember, in August, that was the peak of the Delta surge, and Budget and Finance was being very cautious in what they would allow us to request. However, by November, the tax collections looked more favorable, and we were absolutely appreciative that the 4 positions were included in the governor's budget request.
So that was a yes or no question, and I take your answer as a no. You did not request additional dollars, only the positions in November.
Correct.
So I want to follow up on Commissioner Okuda's line of questioning. You know, we get involved in these, as a state, in these processes. It starts with the flag waving, and then it goes on to policies, and then maybe we get some statutes. It might turn into rules and orders and conditions by various means. But at the end of the pipeline is accountability and enforcement, and we fail miserably often in terms of accountability and enforcement. So I only have a comment to you. I see that you're kind of at the front end of this process currently. We operate at the back end of it and are very frustrated about the lack of ability of accountability and enforcement for ironclad conditions that this commission puts forth. So think about that accountability and enforcement aspect of this process, even now, as you are at the front end on a going forward basis. That's a comment, not a question. Chair, I have a question, and I'll leave it up to you whether it be directed back to the Office of Planning or to our director. I asked the question earlier about the process involved in making a request. It was very clearly stated by Ms. Bass and repeated by Mary Alice that unless they are requested to comment on the aspects of sustainability for a particular docket, for whether it be for our commission or other agencies within the state, they don't have the capacity to do it. So my question was, how do we make that request process-wise? So does our director understand whether there's a process that by which we can implement that? I know of many dockets that I would like to have Ms. Bass comment upon, even briefly, but it's just not happening. So how do we make that happen?
Thank you. I'd like to first Mr. Orodenko to respond.
we, from our end, staff has requested or had discussions with OPSD with regard to having a sustainability coordinator at least view all of the petitions that are put in front of us to see if there is a sustainability issue and to comment. If there are specific concerns that a commissioner has that he wants to make sure, he or she wants to make sure that the sustainability coordinator addresses, we can communicate with OPSD and the sustainability coordinator with regard to that question.
So I take it that if a petition comes forward and we, as a commissioner, review that and we have questions, then the process is that we would go to you and your staff, Dan, to make that known to you, and then you could follow up with Ms. Bass or whomever to get a response.
That is correct.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, generally we're assuming, given what our discussions have been with OP, that the sustainability coordinator is reviewing the documents that have some kind of sustainability issue. But if the commissioner sees something that we don't, then we'll make a specific request.
Well, let me also suggest that, it isn't our rules that we have to give it consideration on every docket. So even a statement by Ms. Bass or the Office of Planning that they see no issue, no sustainability issues, having something like that on the record would be of value to the commission on a docket by docket basis, I would think.
Agreed, Commissioner. The provision in our rules is aimed at petitioners. In other words, they have the burden of showing that or of addressing those issues. If they do, then obviously the sustainability coordinator is automatically involved with reviewing that statement. We would hope that if OPSD finds that whatever representations are made by the petitioner are valid, or that their representations that there are no sustainability or climate change issues is valid, that they would agree. They would make an affirmative statement in their position statement with regard to that.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the case where the petitioner ignores it and then it's up to the commission to draw it out. And yet we have not had a proactive response from the OP.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Ohigashi, followed by Cabral, followed by the chair.
Just following up on and Giovanni indicated, and what I was getting at the beginning, it seems to me that I'm going to use this example. It seems to me like County of Maui, for example, has a special use permit for a landfill, and they want to expand it. So they want to come in for an amendment to the special use permit, not a new special use permit, but an amendment to the special use permit. Now, we just heard from Ms. Bass about the problems with expanding with landfills of the methane gas coming out of it. Leading cause of methane of climate change or leading cause of climate change. So what I'm trying to get at is, shouldn't we be responsible? Shouldn't there be a sustainability requirement for even these amendments to the special use permits? And if the county does not address it, shouldn't OP point it out that they should be addressing whether or not an expansion of their plan to mitigate the expansion of the landfill that causes these greenhouse gases is warranted? A discussion of how we mitigate that that issue. And we haven't had that discussion at all with regard to any of these amendments or any other kind of with regard to this specific area. I mean, with regard to landfills. So I'm just concerned, how do we put into effect a requirement that even these amendments and the county who hears these things before us are required to address these issues? And that goes back to my original statement.
Thank you,
That's my
Commissioner
comment.
Ohigashi. Director Evans.
In response to Commissioner Ohigashi's concern, we will try to add that into our position statement and testimony, so that you. But I would. My own personal thought is that's one of the factors that the Land Use Commission would be considering. And so there would be other factors as well. I would leave it to the wisdom of the Land Use Commission collectively to weigh those various factors, of which sustainability is, in our view, a very important one, but maybe not the only one.
Thank you, Director Evans. Commissioner Cabral.
Thank you, everyone. I hate to say we're beginning to sound like one of those bureaucratic groups that we all agree on it. We're going to talk it to death now. To try and bring it to a conclusion, which I have two things, and I'm wondering if it's appropriate, one, that we make some kind of a motion, even if it's just words, because it doesn't have any power per se, that would help support the sustainability efforts, and that we, the Land Use Commission, move to, and I don't know the right language. I look for my wonderful lawyer commissioners here to be the right language, or the staff, to where we can at least give you one more little check in your box that somebody supports this, your long list of efforts in that. And then two, the second thing is that's still just talk, unless we as land use, and I think again, as Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, need to make sure we have those little checks on the presentation that comes to us. That we had somebody, Miss Poe, I just said a question that said, can't we have that be something that the state office needs to be able to say that these matters have an impact or no impact, and they need to be addressed somewhat like an environmental impact statement. And I think that's an excellent idea. So I'd like to have all of this morning talk result in some kind of a plan for action that becomes, I know it's more work on staff and it's more work on everybody, but I think from what all the commissioners are agreeing, it's just, we got to step outside the old pattern and do something different. So Miss Bass, would it help if we were to make some kind of a motion as a group here to support your efforts at this point in time? Does that, Carrie, help you with going to the legislature or to other groups or something when you're looking for support? Would that help you in any way that we could take action today?
We would never turn down support from the Land Use Commission. We'd be delighted for your support.
Okay, then I'd look towards our wonderful chair, our executive director for what might be the best kind of language, because I don't want to get us into some kind of a catch-22 either, where we've done something that somebody turns around, all these tricky lawyers out there, not in our group, but out there. So any comments from Jonathan, maybe, or Dan on what we can do?
So, well, Commissioner Cabral, thank you very much for that sentiment. I had indicated earlier in our discussion, I was going to make a space for First Vice Chair Giovanni to offer a motion at the conclusion of our discussion. So I will do that, and then everybody will have a chance, including you, to weigh in on what sentiments we might express. I have a series of things that are really less questions, I apologize, and more observations that come out of this discussion. A few things, and not necessarily in order of importance. I will slightly pick on Ms. Bass for the use of the word brain drain. It is a pet peeve of mine. for a few reasons, and I would like us to strike it from our thinking. First of all, I'm like super grateful that people like Nancy Cabral and Dan Giovanni moved to Hawaii. When we talk about brain drain, we forget to talk about how much we've gained from the people who've come here. It also sort of says to those of us who were born and raised here and stayed, like, so what? You're saying we stupid, all the smart ones left. In addition, I think, like, you know what? I'm very glad Barack Obama graduated from Punahou, left, and never turned back. What would he be? Senior Vice President, Bank of Hawaii? You know, Ellison Onizuka, Bette Midler, Bruno Mars. You know what? I don't begrudge some of our best and finest going out and impacting the entire world. We want to have a place where local kids, including my own son, has a chance to be here. I get that. But I want us to strike, and it's people with intellectual smarts are no more the people that we want to retain than I think other folks with other different skills. So I just want to strike that from our collective vocabulary. I think we need to think more thoughtfully about what it is that we're trying to do with our local kids. Now to move more substantively, and I'll preface this set of remarks with real admiration to Director Evans for the leadership you've shown for the Office of Planning, and acknowledgement that you are overtasked and under-resourced and you have a tremendous job. But I will say that in recent dockets over the last year or so, I have been sorely disappointed with the representation that OPSD has given to in front of the LUC on various dockets. So just to, like, 3 brief examples. A solar farm that was going to take out a bunch of agricultural production, and there was never a consultation with the Water Commission on how that was going to impact water allocation in a critical area. And the OPSD staff member saying, oh yeah, no, it didn't occur to us to talk to them. An acknowledgement from the same staff when there was an allegation on a special permit that an endangered species was going to be impacted, like, oh yeah, well, we just didn't have time to talk to the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. Real core existing sustainability fundamental issues. I know we're going to talk about it again, but there was very little to none of the discussion of the 5-year boundary review that really put, I think, as central to that effort, advancing sustainability goals, more development goals, housing. So I would strongly support a more deep and meaningful engagement of the sustainability perspective and mandates in the reports, because we rely on you and we trust you. And when the OPSD shows up in front of us and advises on their take on things, we give it great weight. And when these things are lacking, however, it makes our jobs really, really hard and difficult. So we'd like to see much more of it. And I think the last thing I'll say before I hand it over to the vice chair to suggest a motion is, and this is just an observation that I had over the course of the many weeks working on this plan as the facilitator. And even though I have a degree in environmental studies, I've been working on these issues for 3+ decades. It had never occurred to me that, you know, with sustainability so central to everything that we do, we will know we've gone somewhere right now when things change at the legislature. And right now at the legislature, the assumption on the way committees are structured is that there's the subject matter committees, and then there's judiciary and the money committee. And the assumption is, well, everything either has an effect on laws or an effect on the state's finances, so they have to go through them. There's not a mega sustainability committee, but everything the legislature passes absolutely has an impact on whether or not we're going to be more sustainable or not. And when we possibly get to the day when the legislature has a powerful central committee that actually also has to review the sustainability impacts of any piece of legislation, I know that we'll get somewhere. The last unhappy factoid I want to share is that despite all the awesomeness we're doing, in 2021, we consumed more coal globally than any year before. We're not doing well globally, even as we try locally, and we have to do a hell of a lot more before we cook ourselves and our future generations. With that happy note, I turn to First Vice Chair Giovanni to suggest some language.
Thank you, Chair, for laying that foundation of grief for my my happy moment. But I concur with everything you said, Chair. So thank you for putting it on the record. But I would like to make a motion on behalf of this commission. And the motion is that we go on record in acknowledging the importance and the value of the branch of what is the formal name of the branch? I lose track, Ms. Bass.
Statewide sustainability branch.
Of the statewide sustainability branch of the Office of Planning and Strategic Development and Sustainable Development. We acknowledge their value and importance to the state and to the operation of the state agencies. And I, at the same time, feel that it has been understaffed and under-supported financially, and we would encourage and support proposals to the legislature to add staffing and a line item budget for outside funding to this branch on a going forward basis. And I would ask that our staff articulate that motion in better words and that it be signed by our chair and put forth on a timely basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Giovanni. Commissioner Cabral.
I would like to second that very robust motion. Thank you.
Who I will note for the record and in relation to your early comments did not come from one of the attorneys on our commission.
Yeah, thank you.
So, commissioners, we have a motion and a second before us. Commissioner Ohigashi.
Just wanted to be sure that are we doing this in a form of a letter signed by the commission chair? And I would, if it is in the form of a letter, I would like also to be the chair be authorized to testify if necessary in front of any committee for the legislature.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I think that that's a great suggestion, Commissioner Ohigashi. I do think it has to be formalized in the form of a written correspondence. I don't know if it's a letter or a memorandum or some other document.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
We can send a letter to OP, but I think that the preferable way to handle this is to for us to memorialize the commission's sentiments in testimony that we sent to the legislature. And we can draft a statement with regard to that will be incorporated in all of our testimony and that we will file anytime OPSD's sustainability coordinator has an issue relating to her funding or any programs that she has. I mean, we'll send a copy of that to Mary Alice as well, so she can wave it in front of the committees if she wants to, but we will also endeavor to be present and submit testimony containing this commission sentiments whenever there is a matter that that concerns the sustainability branch.
Thank you. Commissioner Chang, followed by Axon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to support the motion, but in light of both Ms. Bass and Mary Alice's comments that they're meeting with the Budget Committee this afternoon, I would feel comfortable that Mary Alice, assume, depending upon the outcome of the vote, but at least orally communicate to the legislators, the commission's motion and action, and that a letter should be forthcoming as well as relevant testimony during the legislative process. But I think empower her with the ability to orally represent what happened today. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to the Movant. I think where we're at from the sort of comments from our fellow commissioners and the statement from our executive officer is that whether it is in the form of a letter that I signed that sort of formally summarizes our sentiments, or simply a language statement. And what's your preference?
I would follow the direction of the of our director, that he be authorized to provide written testimony in support of the sustainability branches initiatives that are put forth before the legislature. I do think it carries weight to have some letter as well that is signed by our chair that Mary Alice can waive anytime she wants. So I would encourage both.
That's the intent of the move on. Seconder, are you good?
Yes, I think it should be on all fronts. It can't hurt that we have the motion in the records, that we have the letters, that we have the verbal support, and that our executive officer, Dan, when he's there, can do support when he's at the legislature, both written and verbal.
Commissioner Okuda, and then if there's no further discussion, I'll ask the executive officer to read off the motion as he would if we were taking the vote.
Yeah, thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Okuda.
Chair. Just so that there is a clear face on this motion, if somewhere in the document, it can also specifically state that the motion was brought by Commissioner Giovanni, seconded by Commissioner Cabral, because I think, not to stroke anyone's ego, but they have a lot of weight in the community. And I think it's good to put a face on the motion. If it just says Land Use Commission, I don't think it's going to have as much weight. I'm serious. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Oradinker, could you read off what you would read as if we were taking a vote?
That we are going to go, the commission is going to go on record via a letter signed by the chair acknowledging the statewide sustainability branch of OPSD's importance, recognizing its value, and that it is understaffed and undersupported, and request a line item budget.
Any comments, commissioners?
Yeah, I think we need to specifically support their actual request that's before the legislature right now for the 4 positions, and then add to that consideration for financial line item support as well.
I agree to that as the seconder.
Read that now, Mr. Ordenko, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is as stated with the addition of noting specific support for its request for 4 positions. Commissioner Giovanni.
Aye.
Commissioner Cabral.
Aye.
Commissioner Axon.
Yes.
Commissioner Okuda.
Yes.
Commissioner Ohigashi.
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Aye.
Chair Scheuer.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion passes with 7 votes, unanimously with 7 votes.
Thank you very much. Director Evans, Ms. Bass, thank you very much. You had something you want to say, Ms. Bass?
Yes, I'd like to thank the commission for your support for sustainability. And I think I really appreciate your suggestions to us to make our assessment of individual dockets that invoke either sea level rise, climate change, or sustainability issues, make that more clear to you so that you can take that into consideration as you weigh the various factors in making your decision on the matters before you. So thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Director. Ms. Bass?
Yes, thank you, Chair. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity to present the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan. It was it's an honor of mine to be here and present that to you all today. Secondly, thank you all for your support. I'm surprised by this motion, and thank you so much. It gave me chicken skin, and just from the bottom of my heart and deep within my na'au, I want to convey to you mahalo. And also just thank you so much for your service that you all provide to the state of Hawaii so that we can continue to strive towards that equitable, climate resilient, and sustainable Hawaii in our future. So mahalo, thank you so much. And oh, by the way, Commissioner Okuda, we did provide a copy of this presentation to the LUC staff with the listing of the land use recommendations per your previous request. And I'd be happy to also share the very limited printed copies of the plan if need be. So please just let us know through the LUC staff how many printed copies you have. Again, it's just very limited. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bass. Commissioners, there being no further business for the day, I'm going to recess this meeting till 9 a.m. tomorrow, where we'll do a call to order and then take up the important ag lands petition from the city and county of Honolulu.
Thank you all.